Hey everyone, 2020 is here, and what better way to start off the decade than by going over the best and worst things from the previous decade. So without further ado, let's begin. Best new invention, Tesla cars, because they don't use gas, they're environmentally friendly, they're sleek, they're futuristic, they're self-driving, they're just awesome, cool looking, fun to drive vehicles. Worst new invention, social media. I know social media technically wasn't invented this decade, but a lot of new social media sites were, like Instagram and either way, social media just in general kind of sucks. It's like a net negative to humanity. It's fun to use sometimes, it's addicting, but ultimately we're all kind of suffering more for it, I think. Best website, YouTube, for allowing us the creative freedom to upload videos like this, share our thoughts, give input, have an alternative media platform where anyone and everyone can have their voice heard. Worst website, also YouTube, because it's the same site that's pushing that kind of content instead of this kind of content. Best social movement of the decade, I would have to say the People's Revolution of Hong Kong, the revolution of our times. People of Hong Kong who are so used to freedom and democracy want to uphold their rights against the wishes of the authoritarian Chinese regime. I think that's inspiring, and the fact that they hold up American flags and they value freedom is so amazing, is so beautiful. And then you contrast that with the worst social movement of the decade, Antifa, which has communist flags in America and vandalizes things and doesn't really have a good motive or ideology. They're just kind of f***ing everything up. Best song of the decade, this is going to come out of left field for most people, but honestly, by Kendrick Lamar, I think it's actually kind of an underrated song. It came out 2014. Especially in the context of Kendrick's album, To Pimp a Butterfly. It's such an uplifting, hopeful, inspiring message about loving oneself in spite of so much adversity, in spite of so much depression, and all these other things that lead up to that song. I just think it's an awesome song. It's an awesome message. It's well made. It's well performed. The Isley Brothers sample, it has this old soul sample, rock and roll sample. I forgot. Anyways, great song. Album of the decade, gonna have to go with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Mr. Kanye West. That came out at the turn of the decade, and honestly, it's held up for all these years. It's just banger after banger after banger on that track list. Yeah, I feel like I'm Anthony Fantano right now, or maybe the opposite of Fantano, because I actually love the album. Great album by Kanye West. Album of the decade. Film of the decade, Ex Machina, came out in 2014. I'm not going to spoil too much. It's an excellent movie about artificial intelligence, about the potential future of artificial intelligence, about our relationship with robots and AI as humans. And I'll just put it to you this way. The movie is absolutely brilliant because not only is there a Turing test in the movie with the characters, but there's an actual Turing test that occurs by watching the movie for the first time as a viewer. You'll know what I mean if you actually watch the movie. Anime of the decade. I haven't seen that many, actually. I'm the kind of anime viewer who watches a few really good ones and is really into those, but I don't like watch slice of life or just random trash anime all the time. Anime of the decade for me is Attack on Titan. First season came out with this amazing production value, just captivating story, interesting characters. Second season kind of fell off a little bit. A lot of exposition, not too much going on. Third season, though, really brought it back. Just an awesome series. Attack on Titan, for sure. Anime of the decade. Game of the decade. A lot of great games came out this decade, many of which I've not even played. If you can believe it, I've not even played Skyrim. Maybe that's a separate video right there. First time playing Skyrim ever. I haven't played Fallout New Vegas. I know that's one people love. I've played Portal 2. That's a great game. Not really into Call of Duty. But I think you guys know Zelda Breath of the Wild absolutely pushing the boundaries of the Zelda franchise, reinventing it, really creating this sandbox-like experience that's very different from other sandbox games, very immersive, very single-player focused, very story-focused, without being overbearing, without being anything that's too restrictive. It doesn't do a lot of really in-depth things with the world, but what it does do with the mechanics, with the physics, with the weapons, with the abilities that you have, it does very well. The puzzles, it's an amazing game. Definitely game of the decade for me. Probably my favorite Zelda game ever, and there's a lot of great Zelda games. Meme of the decade. Pepe the Frog. Actually, according to YouTube Guidelines Section 5C, Pepe the Frog is indeed a racist symbol, so we're gonna have to cut that one. Doge the Dog. Best year of the decade, 2016, because it was the year I really got serious with YouTube. I felt like a lot of things were happening, a lot of things were changing, perhaps for the better, in a better direction. I felt like there was a lot of energy in 2016, so yeah, that would be my year of the decade. Worst year of the decade. Honestly, 2019, it has not been the best year for me for a number of personal reasons. And I don't know, I just feel like this year was not as good as it could have been in a lot of ways. But nonetheless, we're moving on. We're moving forward. 2020. Best new media, podcasts and long-form conversations. I realize again that these have been around before the decade. Why am I still wearing these glasses? But they kind of have been popularized and more widely used now in this decade. And I think that's a great thing because you can learn so much from podcasts and long-form conversations, so much about people, so much about individuals, so much about ideas, more than you would learn from, a 5-minute blurb on cable news or something like that. And even more than most, short videos. So long-form conversations, if you have the patience, if you have the time, they're definitely a great form of media that I'm glad is really popular. Worst new media, TikTok, Vine, the complete opposite of long-form podcasts and conversations, these short, 5-second clips that just lower your attention span and serve absolutely no function other than a short laugh, if that, or cringe-worthy moment. They're awful, they're horrible, they don't further humanity, they don't make you think, they make you think less, okay? Biggest social issue. Depression, loneliness, anxiety, nihilism, all of that kind of falls under mental health, I would say. Lack of purpose, lack of meaning, all of those things are very deeply related to each other. I think that's the biggest issue of our times. It'll probably be the biggest issue of this decade too. I hope we make progress in that regard, but seems like that's gone kind of downhill amongst people. Best book. Not a big reader, but an answer to that chaos, to that meaninglessness, I would say is Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I know this is for some reason controversial. I know that Peterson is kind of controversial in this highly divisive political age, but honestly, this is a really good book. I learned a lot from it, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about how to live life, and I apply it to my life almost every single day. So this book, for sure. Biggest event of the decade, probably Trump winning the election. Maybe honorable mention is Epstein dying. I'm not saying that as a big Trump supporter or pro-Trump guy, but it was the biggest upset. I was completely just blown away when he won the election. Pretty much nobody thought he was going to win. All the polls said he was not going to win, and yet he won. So that would be the biggest event, I would say, of the past decade. At least biggest media event. Best YouTube video. It's called This Man Flew to Japan to Sing ABBA in a Big Cold River. And it's by Austin Weber. Now, if you go watch the video, it's still pretty damn good without knowing the backstory. It's this guy who is doing just that, singing in a river in Kyoto, Japan, and kind of in and about the city as well during this musical number of Mamma Mia, which is a great song, and he has a great voice. It's an amazing cover. But what most people don't know is the backstory to this video, which is that it was posted on Reddit with the title explaining that the guy who made the video, Austin Weber, originally planned to go to Japan with his girlfriend. But she broke up with him, so he used that ticket for his dad and himself instead. and he flew there and he just decided to sing a Mamma Mia cover in the river. And I just find that really inspiring, really wholesome, really kind of like old YouTube vibes. This guy took a situation that was a huge negative, a huge letdown, and turned it into this artistic, creative expression, which I find really compelling, which I find really relatable, especially as a guy. You know, sometimes women come and go, but the fact that he was able to just enjoy himself, create this masterful cover while going on this trip with his dad, I found that to be really amazing and really wholesome. YouTuber of the decade, I would have to go with Joe Rogan on this one. Again, long form conversations, podcasts. In fact, Joe started his podcast on Christmas of 2009, so it's been almost exactly 10 years since he began that. And I think with his podcast has also been the growth of long form conversations and podcasts in general. So he kind of was an innovator in that. He kind of was the first person to really make a huge platform with podcasting in the way that he did it anyways. So I would put him as the best YouTuber. Artist of the decade, Banksy, the street artist, the graffiti artist with a political and social message oftentimes. His work is really heavily valued. He's anonymous. He kind of represents a lot of things about this decade and the previous one with the internet, with social upheaval, with political change. He's a great figurehead for a lot of people and where they're at, how they view art, how they view life, and he expresses it in a really beautiful way. Plus, he trolled art critics by printing out that picture of the balloon girl at that art show, at that gallery, and then it was shredded as it was printing. Like that was amazing. And that pretty much sums it up. That's my recap of the past decade. On to the roaring 20s. Who knows what the future will bring? Maybe we'll have a lot more things to talk about. Maybe a lot better things. Maybe some things will be worse. Maybe some things will be better. Either way, let's go boldly into the future and hope for the best. Thanks for watching.